Hi everyone, here's the Book Chemist once again. In my own experience, the New York Review of Books editions of the classics, these guys publish all sorts of classics, really from ancient Greece to basically the late 20th century. Their editions tend to be awesome. They are often introduced by great people. This one I'm holding in my hands is introduced by Ray Bradbury. The Robert Sheckley Store of the Worlds collection, which I reviewed couple of years ago, is introduced by Jonathan Lethem, edited too by Jonathan Lethem, and another guy I'll be overimposing over my ashamed face in this moment. And yeah, they tend to be great, and this one in particular, John Collier's Fancies and Goodnights, is awesome because it features the perfect cover for the stories within. Take a look at it. If you take a quick look at it, it seems like sort of a homely scene. There's a house in the background, there's people dressed in green playing hockey on ice. Very British scene for whatever reason, it gives me this impression, but then when you look closely at it, take a better look, there's something majorly wrong going on around here. There's a guy here lying on the floor inside a block of ice, and this guy seems to be floating in the air for some reason, and he has a kind of a, his expression tells us he doesn't care, which speaks volumes about the fact that something really wrong is going on, and that's perfectly the kind of stuff that happens all the time in John Collier's stories. It captures the feeling of these stories beautifully. John Collier writes amazing weird tales where things go wrong in the most bizarre of ways and all sorts of weird shit happens all the time, and things that and things escalate very quickly in his fiction, and his stuff is an incredible pleasure to read. I can't recommend his fiction highly enough. The stories in this collection, in Fancies and Goodnights, tend to be quite brief. They are rarely more than 8 pages long and often less than 5 or 6, but they pack so much punch and so much narrative chops, and they're really, basically none of these stories is in any way disappointing as far as its sheer plot is concerned. They always have the most, unpredictable resolutions and the most awesome punchlines at the end, and sometimes they are so surprising, and sometimes they are, they leave you kind of shocked. It's always a pleasure to read them, also because they are written in an amazing, luscious, beautiful style with all these sorts of bizarre adjectives and these recurring images. Michael Chabon, my main man, wrote on the back of this edition, he says that, he speaks of the dark, silky stuff of Collier's prose style, which is exactly the kind of phrase you might find inside a John Collier story, which is exactly the kind of phrase you might find inside a Michael Chabon story. What do I know? But if asked, I would say that Chabon might have learned 1 or 2 things about writing from John Collier's awesome tales. Now, I may be an idiot and John Collier may be the most famous writer out there, but I personally had not heard about him until very recently. Actually, I only discovered he existed because Chabon himself mentions him in Moonglow, which is another novel, by the way. I think it's coming out in paperback. Either it's just come out or it's coming out soon. Check it out if you still haven't. And I checked out John Collier's stories because of that mention, and he is such a great writer. I shit you not, his stories are on par with the best stuff by Borges, by the best stuff by Cortazar. They have that same weird feeling of some romantic European stories. E.T.A. Hoffmann comes to mind. But these stories also feel really contemporary, have aged beautifully. They're not that old. I think he wrote in the, mostly in the 20s and 30s. They have aged beautifully. They're a pleasure to read because of their style. And once again, shockingly good plots. I've often talked on my channel about books that are treasure chests, and this is 100% one of them. You find all sorts of stories in here. There's ghost stories. There's one of the most fascinating ghost stories I've ever read, again with an impossibly good last sentence. This guy is so good with his endings. There are stories about dinosaurs in here, and there are stories about genies inside bottles, and there are also a few stories about the common life of married couple, which tend to be the weirdest shit in the whole bunch. And in those kinds of stories, usually someone will die before the end of the tale, and all sorts of bizarre stuff keeps happening. I think this guy had a kind of a bleak view on marriage, but his stories, you know, reproduce that in a way that is both hilarious, terrifying at times, and absolutely compelling. Fancies and Goodnights is an excellent edition. It's also great as a physical item, both because the New York Review of Books know their shit, and because when you collect a few of these, they make a very good impression on your shelf. You know, yeah, I'm a shallow reader, but they do. They're pretty to look at when you put them on your shelf. But I am not a John Collier expert in any way, so if you know about any other edition which is better or which, you know, people should check out, absolutely do let me know in the comments. Also, I don't know anything about his novels. I know he wrote a novel about a guy who marries a monkey. Again, I don't think he was really a big fan of marriage, but anyway, and let me know about all the stuff in the comments. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching this one, guys. Read this stuff. Bye, guys.